Mhm. Hello, everyone. Apparently, Mike and Russ have something to say. So Kevin Allen's going to be joining in a second. I'm going to be helping him get online. Going to set the mice in motion. But go ahead, you guys. Continue.
Russ, what time is the World Series on in Newfoundland?
I don't know. Nobody knows. It's ridiculous. Why do you have a time zone that's not on a strict hour basis? It's like from Meridian time, it's 3.5 hours. From our time, it's an hour and a half. What the hell is the half hour about?
Well, okay, and I had to look this up because you got to remember, for me watching Hockey Night in Canada on CBC since I was a kid, I always remember either Hockey Night in Canada or the shows that they were promoting, like the Beachcombers or whatever.
Right.
They would say, Saturday or Sunday at 8 p.m., 8:30 Newfoundland. And he was like, okay, and I never really thought about it, but I always heard it.
Right.
And the reason why is because now we're on the Eastern time zone. There's an Atlantic time zone,
Right.
which is what the Maritimes are on.
Right.
And Newfoundland and Labrador are on the eastern portion of the Atlantic time zone. And apparently Newfoundland was an independent, I don't know if it was an independent country, but it was not part of Canada for a certain point until a certain point. And the time zones had already been established, and they wanted to they were doing their own separate thing, so they're a half an hour ahead of the Atlantic. I know Kaya agrees with this.
She doesn't agree. It doesn't make sense. It's like it's the same thing. All right, I'm going to push the Newfoundland thing aside because people have just accepted it, but somebody should have questioned that at the very beginning of time. But anyhow, again, in a couple of weeks, we fall backwards. Yeah. Why? My dogs don't care. I got to tell you something. They're on a schedule, and when it's time to eat, it's time to eat. They don't care what time it used to be. To them, the time hasn't changed.
Well,
it's an antiquated thing. Stop it already.
Apparently, it's all about, at least the reason now given is it's all about what time kids are going to school and it being light out. Because daylight savings time, it will preserve the sun coming up, being around 6:30, 7 o'clock at the latest when kids are at the bus stops, getting on the bus to school.
But every kid is with a parent at a bus stop now. Like that, no kid goes to a bus stop alone. It's not like when we were kids and the parents just said, hey, have a good day, and we just walked out and went to the bus stop and nobody knew what the hell happened to us, but somehow we got to school. It's different now.
And nobody cares that like the sun goes down at 4:30 in the afternoon. It's like you're basically coming home from work or coming home from wherever in the dark. It's in the morning, preserving that the sunrise is when kids go to school. But I can tell you this: I know there's a couple like sort of idiosyncrasies out there. A friend of mine lives in Arizona, and Arizona does not observe daylight savings time. So when it gets to the first week of November and everybody falls back an hour, Arizona doesn't. So Arizona switches from Pacific time to Mountain time for November to March because they don't go to daylight savings time, which is bizarre because I have to remember what time I want to message them.
But I think they have it right. It's like, why should you change it? I think every state should just go on their own, go rogue, and not change and not fall back and just leave the time where it is. The sun knows what it's doing. My dog's stomachs know what time it is. You're not fooling anybody. Kids' parents will still be with them on the bus stop. It's not like they need a little extra sun at the bus stop. Leave it alone.
Kevin,
Are we okay?
Just to give you the.
I came back. I have no idea what the heck you guys are talking about.
Just to give you an idea of what the conversation is about.
That'd be good.
Russ is all verklempt about the fact that Newfoundland is an hour and a half ahead of Eastern Standard Time.
Right.
And that in a couple weeks when we fall back for daylight savings time, a state like Arizona does not honor daylight savings time, and they, in a sense, switch from Pacific time zone to Mountain time zone. And
Time.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes.
Do you guys like like go to conventions to come up with stuff to worry about?
No.
Like never in 100 million years would I give just a hoot about that.
All right, and
See, but that's why it is what it is. If people don't question it, it stays the same.
We have a law in my house now that you're not allowed to say. First off, you're never allowed to say it is what it is. That is a statement that cannot be said. That is always the case. That, along with I found it in the last place I looked, are completely ridiculous. Both are obvious statements. You don't keep looking for something once you find something. That is how it works. So we're going to start there. But speaking of 100 million years, Kevin, you transitioned perfectly into what I was going to say. I'm going to give you a fact that's more interesting to start this show than the time.
Good.
Okay, here's now we all think of the dinosaurs, right, as something that a great creature that couldn't handle it and became extinct for whatever reason, and but do you know the dinosaurs have been extinct for 100 million years? Okay, that's why you said
the anniversary.
Yeah, exactly. Happy anniversary to everything. It's not exact, but you said 100 million. You said 100 million years, never 100 million.
Because to me, that's more interesting than the fact that Arizona does not convert.
Right. But even more interesting, the fact that they do you know that they existed for twice as long as the time as since they've been extinct. So they were on the planet for 200 million years. They've been extinct for 100 million years. Okay, we as mammals, like the basically rise of mammals has been over the last 1 million years, and essentially mankind as what we would consider civilized man the last 15,000 years. So let's throw this in. So when you think about all this, if our planet was to cease existing now, we would not be the planet of humans or mammals. We are the planet of dinosaurs. This planet has mostly been inhabited by dinosaurs. That's really, by far, there's no way in God's green nation, especially with kind of just running like we have now, that our planet will live that our mankind will survive 100 million years or 200 million years like the dinosaurs.
All right, two things on that.
Yes.
The first one is they have a new discovery where they're saying with dinosaurs they sounded more like cats than they did what we think of dinosaurs with great growls and stuff, and they sounded more like a purring sound, which I'm not buying. I don't know who came up with that.
But and very funny YouTube videos, though. But
then again, how could a dinosaur know what time it is if it were going to Newfoundland?
All right.
There's no way it would know.
Yeah, I also know what 100 million years equals. It equals the next times the Maple Leafs will make the playoffs.
There you have it. Yeah.
But I now see now. Russ has made this debate more interesting with that last comment about that the dinosaurs would not know what time it is. See, now that I can get into, but the rest of it is.
I would venture a guess that the dinosaurs knew a hell of a lot more than we think because they were around for 200 million years. That's not easy. I mean, they survived and they knew what time it was. They knew when the hell they had to get out of a certain. They must have migrated to live.
They had a good run. They had a good run.
There must have been things that were happening.
That darn meteorite just whacked them, just knocked them off.
Well, it's not true that I covered the dinosaurs. Brian Berg about it.
Although I have met people who have covered the dinosaurs, and some of them are still being credentialed in Canada. Yeah, that's all right.
Please stop.
We talked about one yesterday, actually. All right, so. Well, so did you see? You saw yesterday's comment. This is not. I'm not. Of course, I'm not talking about the guy from the Hockey News when I say that. But you saw yesterday's question to Mike Babcock that involved referring to
Don Cherry.
To Don Cherry, correct, Kevin?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I did see that. I mean, Mike Babcock, I find to be really refreshing at the podium. I think he's one of the best coaches at the podium. He gives you insightful answers. But if he doesn't like one of your questions, that's what happens.
And if you don't like one of your questions, by all means, cite Don Cherry. I mean, that's like...
Yeah, no, I mean, and to be honest, Kenny Campbell, who has been around forever, who I have great respect for. I've had him on my Facebook Live shows. In fact, you filmed it for me.
Kenny Campbell's very good, as a great guy.
Yeah, very learned guy. He knows the game, but he also doesn't pull any punches when he asks questions. And so his reputation, precedes him. And I bet that answer was not so much about that question, but it was about all the questions that Kenny has.
Yeah, there might have been something there. There seemed to be something deeper there.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So I mean, I think that he has reacted that, but it doesn't change my thought that I would rather have Mike Babcock at the podium answering questions, and pretty much everyone else, every other coach in the league, not all of them. There's some really good ones, but
no, I agree though. I agree.
Yeah, John Cooper, I like him a lot too. There's a couple that I really like, but yeah.
Yeah, no, me too. And some guys are just not good at the podium. Like Peter Laviolette is a great example. Like you get Peter one-on-one, and he's a fun guy to talk to. In a podium, like he's a different guy.
Oh, you're totally right. And he's not just fun to talk to one-on-one. He is brilliant to talk to. Like he brings things that you've never heard. Like he has so much incredible hockey knowledge that he never seems to put in front of the media. Like he just has it.
Well, when he's at the podium, I always want to pull him aside and say, Peter, you should just quit. Because it's pretty clear you're miserable doing this job. And you should just step down because you're just really unhappy. Because that's the impression he gives when he's.
Oh yeah, this is the worst.
He could not have a worse job than.
Oh man! All right. So thinking of extinct, I'm wearing my Cleveland Barons jersey today, by the way.
Very nice.
They didn't exist for very long. I was trying to go through what happened to Cleveland Barons, and we all know where they ended up. Do you know what happened to Cleveland Barons?
They were merged with the Minnesota North Stars.
That's right. So
yeah, they got divided up. Yeah,
kind of merged in. So all right, so let's get into this, and we got lots to talk about, and on the journalism front as well today, which is why I have my new. I would get this every year. I don't know why, but I get this every year. The Associated Press style book, which I love.
I didn't know they still made it.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, I didn't either. That's news to me. I didn't know.
2016, it costs like $50. It's amazing, and it'll teach you, for example. And Kevin, you are the most esteemed journalist we could possibly have on here. Do you know how to do this? Do you know how to write when you write power play versus power play goal? What's the difference?
Well, here's the problem. Because the AP style book is the Bible as general, but every newspaper has a different style for the way to do things as well. So in our paper, a power play goal would be a hyphenated.
Right.
Goal.
And that's how I do it. Yeah.
And a power play is not hyphenated.
And a power play is not.
And that is exactly how it says it in the AP style book, by the way. So that is great. But so at some point during the show, I may throw out other things for you.
Was that book from the Paleolithic age as well, Ak?
No. This is the coolest thing to have. I mean, it's just such a cool. It's not just a dictionary. It just tells you how to write certain things that you want question. It's fun. It has a whole.
Well, when in the old days, when you started in this profession, there was a bunch of guys that had been around and covering the news since the Paleozoic era, and they would constantly correct you. I remember we had a very beloved professor named Kurt Stadfeld, who told the story that when he worked at the Kansas City Star, and he started out on the obit desk, which is where you always start, and part of the obit desk was you also, in addition, you wrote about the social news of the area, so anniversaries and celebrations and such. And he said that the guy that now Kurt Stadfield was to me was older than dirt, but he had another guy that mentored him that was just as old as dirt, and he told us all that he was writing up the obits and thought he was doing a great job. And the guy came over and he goes, "I've been reading your work," and he said, people do not celebrate an anniversary of 50 years. They observe it.
They observe
an anniversary. And people don't pass away or go to the great beyond. They die. And, Kurt Stadfield always, when we wrote obits and stuff for his classes and stuff, he had the same position. You had to observe.
Wait. So, Kevin, are you now telling me there is no rainbow bridge for our pets? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I am saying that. You
are saying that.
You can't say that.
Well, there's a big thing in here about Stanley Cup Final versus Stanley Cup Finals, which is really
fun. That's the greatest argument.
We're singular, by the the It's conference finals at USA Today. Conference finals, but only one final.
Only one final. And when you write the Stanley Cup, you capitalize it.
Always. Yeah.
NHL playoffs, you only capitalize NHL, not playoffs. So you don't capitalize.
That part I don't get.
There's all, and that's why you need a book like this, because someone has to decide. That's what I always liked about it. Someone's going to say this is how it goes.
You can't write the article. The news will be old.
Yeah, there's two conference finals, so that's why.
Right. That's right. That's exactly the logic we use at USA Today. So
Right.
Well, let's get started because I want to talk about a couple of things.
Yes, let's do it.
Going. Here we go. The 28th. Okay. All right. Bing, bing, bing. So watch the dinosaur thing. You have to watch it live.
What?
Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, October 28th, 2016.
Nope,
it's not. Damn it. I've been on a streak, haven't I?
Yeah, you broke it now.
October 26th. All right, thanks, guys. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, October 26th, 2016.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, USA Today Sports.
And I'm Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday in the afternoons to sort of fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And today we have kind of an interesting thing happening in the world of the people who cover the hockey world. Kevin, tell us what's going on.
Well, I mean, it happened yesterday, and I'm sure everybody who's part of the Twitter world has already seen the discussion on it. But Gannett, which owns my paper, had major cutbacks, and it was supposed to be 2% of the workforce. There have been news stories that suggest it's going to go higher. But, in my paper, we laid off some people, good quality people who were laid off in strictly a financial move. But it sort of impacted the hockey world as well, because Kevin Klubja, who had covered the AHL for years and years and years, and also covered the Sabres on a pretty regular basis, not every game, but was well known to all the NHL writers and to a lot of fans, and was a very gifted writer. I worked with him at the Olympics. I don't know, we probably did 4 or 5 Olympics. That seems about right anyway. And we always had a running joke because one time he had to cover the bronze medal game for us at USA Today, and he goes, "Why aren't you doing the bronze medal game?" And I said, "I don't do bronze medal." And so every time Kevin saw me, of course, he'd say, "You don't do bronze medal." And I said, "No, I don't do bronze medal." But anyway, he was very, very talented guy, an old school guy who still took notes without using a recording device, which to me is amazing. And he was incredibly accurate with his note taking as well. And I hope he lands elsewhere. But in this day and age, he's a little bit older, like myself, and it's hard to land again. But I wish Kevin the best, because he's very, very good and a quality hockey guy. And then Rick Carbonello, who was covering the Rangers again. I think he's done it off and on for about 3 decades.
Yeah, it's been off and on lately.
Yeah. Well, he was supposed to be back doing it because Andrew Gross, who's also part of our chain, was going to the Devils, and Carpy was going to move in there, and he was on our podcast at USA Today a couple of weeks ago. I was pretty excited about it, but he was one of the guys that were laid off, and again, this was all just to financial issues as the Gannett and the downsizing of the industry. And the third guy, who a lot of hockey fans know because he was the primary Nashville Predators writer from the beginning, and John Glennon. Who is still sort of the backup. I think, as I recall, the last time I checked, he was sort of the number 2 Predators writer and the number 2 Titans writer in Nashville. But to me, I think of him as a hockey guy because he covered the Predators for so many years. And again, a real quality reporter and writer, worked hard at his craft. And I hate to see good people lost to the industry. Not
to put you in a tough spot, but the one question that's been going around, which is always one that's gone around in my head, which I think is fair, is when you fire guys that have a following like this, you obviously replace them with reporters that don't have a following like this. Don't people who have the following draw in the subscribers that make the company money?
Well, that's a fair argument, I'm guessing what the argument would be. Well, first of all, it's just financial, and the biggest problem is that with experience it comes a higher salary, and the problem is that makes you vulnerable. The more money you make in today's world, and it's not just in journalism, in all worlds,
sure,
they're looking to they're not cutting the $35,000 a year people.
Right. Journalism has gone the way of teaching nowadays, because a teacher who's taught for 30 to 35 years, like my father did in Buffalo, who was making $55,000 or $60,000 a few years ago, you know, he retired because they could hire somebody at $31,000, and they thought they could get that person to teach more classes and teach him and give him less benefits and things of that nature.
But you know, I can even make the argument, Mike, that makes more sense than the hockey writer who has a following, because the guy that they're bringing in is not going to have a following like that. Even if it's a good Twitter following, it's not going to be like that.
Well, the reason I make the analogy to teaching, Russ, is because the teacher who's been teaching for 30 or 35 years, I mean, there are some people who are burnouts out there, but there are also people who have a wealth of knowledge. And the teachers that you learn the most from were the ones who had the experience. And I think writers like Kevin, who I had some interaction with covering the Marlies, you know, he's a great writer and a great source of knowledge. So losing somebody like that is, I think, a real shame.
Yeah, and to answer Russ's question, you know, we've all sort of developed our own brand through social media. As much as a lot of us complain about, you know, it has become a ball and chain. I mean, you have a brand, Mike has a brand, Eck has a brand that, you know, that goes with us. The problem is, I think the argument the other way is, you know, was your brand created on the strength, in my case, of USA Today, which is a pretty big entity? So it's sort of all intertwined, and I'm sure their argument would be, okay, you know, we'll develop a new guy who will help along with our brand. I mean, you know, our social media, Twitter that just goes out of USA Today has, you know, is a giant, and you know, so you know, you benefit from that. But it's a very complicated issue because I think you do, as in any industry, if you experience people, make fewer mistakes, and they know more, as you just said. You know, Kevin O'Clubjan knows everything about the AHL, and he knows the Sabres history, and he's got a great memory, and you know, he's got a phone list in his cell phone of a lot of people he can call, and those, you know, are lost to the Rochester paper. So
because not everything's on Wikipedia, right? That's the big thing.
Well, yeah, and it's about relationships. I mean, you know, and I think this is true in so many different industries. Like your ability, if you're a salesman, comes from all the relationships you've had through the years through your customers. And in my case, you know, my strength is my relationships with all the people within the hockey world. You know, most of the time when I call these people, they know who I am because I've been dealing with them forever. And the same is true. And that's why it's sad. And I get it that, you know, when you're running a major company and you got to, you know, it's not a coincidence that it comes in the fourth quarter as they're setting up for the new year, because historically that's when cutbacks come, because you're trying to make your balance sheet look good for the start of 2017. So you cut them in the fourth quarter to make that first quarter look good in 2017. So I understand how it works, but that doesn't make it any easier, and it's very sad because it's just a number on the balance sheet, but these are real lives, and as is happening in all the other industries as well. It's happening to people who are in their 50s whose ability to land jobs is stunted because of their age.
That's the real hard part of it, you know, and it is. I mean, what Russ
send Russ another invite.
I just did. What Russ is was saying is interesting. I mean, if you follow other industries in journalism, like I do, and especially in this tech world, you can look at a guy like David Pogue, who David Pogue is a tech reporter, and he has been for the New York Times for years. And you may have seen David Pogue on, you know, Nova, and he does some really good TV stuff. He works with Good Morning America. He's a huge guy, and he's got a huge following. And it came to the point where the New York Times was hardballing him on something, and he went and just did his own thing. And now he's first to say he's making 10 times as much money as he did. So we're in a world where that exists. It's hard to pull off, though. And because a lot of guys, you know, aren't necessarily, I mean, Pogue had the advantage because he's tech savvy to start with, you know, so he knows how he can do it. A lot of these writers, they haven't spent their lives trying to create their own brand. But yet Twitter has helped people create their own brand. And there's definitely the case is that, you know, more people read like my articles coming from my Twitter link. So it really doesn't matter if I'm on HockeyBuzz or where I am, because most people are reading my articles from there. So that is
the only issue is anybody who watched 60 Minutes this week, they did a fascinating story on and I know a little bit about this from talking to you. Otherwise, I would know nothing about it. But the influencers, they're called, and I sort of it sort of the light bulb went on for me. Now I sort of get it because, as you know, it's difficult to translate hits into monetary to monetize it, and the amount of hits, and we went through this with trying to build our podcast at USA Today. It used to be that you could make some money if you just had any hits, and you sort of build it slowly. But now, and it was pretty clear on the 60 Minutes report, you got to have millions. Now, some people are capable of doing that, and your guy that you just mentioned is capable of doing that. And these guys that have these comedy shows, they had a guy on there who does 6-second comedy videos who gets thousands upon thousands of dollars.
Yeah, no, there's YouTube people who are brilliant with it.
Yeah, and he's only on 6 seconds, and the guy from 60 Minutes says, "How do you be funny in 6 seconds?" But he can, and the guy who does the he gets $100,000 for product placement. He just did ads for Dunkin' Donuts, and these guys are multimillionaires who are represented by major agents. So some have figured out how to do it, but it's hard to make it work. That there are people who have hundreds of thousands of hits who haven't figured out how to monetize it.
Yeah, so, and then big companies often have a tough time translating their old paradigms of how much staff they have and all that together, and because you can make money, but you can't make as much money as you might want to make, and you can't carry the same kind of staff, and that's why you see these cutbacks, and this happens.
Right.
It's bad, and it's bad. It's bad because the wrong people are being cut back, and then quite often I think they aren't looking at really where. I mean, the content is still king on the internet, and at the end of the day, the best content is still the most important thing.
Yeah. If you have a website, you need content.
You need good content. You need to be consistent with it, and you need people to want to read your opinion, or else you're not going to make it. And
I mean that's why there's hope for those writers who work for newspapers who have lost their jobs, if they can make the transition, because they have the contacts, because they have the experience, because they have the knowledge, and because they can write, they can transition hopefully to a career online. I don't know whether they can make as much money as they did, but there is the possibility there, because content is king.
Yeah, the issue is how mainstream your area of interest is.
Right.
And that's become an issue as well. Like if you're a baseball writer, and you have a brand that's better than being a hockey writer, because baseball is just broader. And the drive now to bring people into your your domain is
it's funny because that I disagree with that completely. In terms, and I think this could be just the different kind of experiences we've had, But with me, I've found the more specific you get about something, the better chance you have at making a living. Like like for me, example, if I was just at a hockey website, I don't know that I'd be able to support myself on it. People might like my hockey opinions like that, but the fact that I have a hockey rumor website is why I've been successful. Like the fact that people want the hockey rumors from it, and they see me as a hockey rumor person. Otherwise, and now I can make
you were also the first.
They're the first, right? That's true. Well, there were others, but yeah, I mean, there were guys like Spectre out there and other people too. But I think that I was the first to do it, maybe at this scale. But that was a lot of that comes down to
But there's a difference. Like Spectre is an aggregator site. It's somebody who links to other.
Right, he's throwing his opinions out there. Right, I agree with that. That's true. So I've found that and I tell people when they want to get into the internet, what I tell them to do is find something very specific and become the best at it that you can possibly be.
Yeah. Well, I saw a story where a guy made he had interest in potato chips. I've told you this story where. The guy loved potato chips, and he just started a website, and he wanted to, every time he'd travel, he'd get all the different brands, and then he'd take a photo and he'd put it on his website and so forth, and one thing led to another, and I believe I may have the purchaser wrong, but as I remember the story, it was the potato chip lobby group that bought his website, because and it was $1 million deal.
Yeah, right, and that if he was just a food reviewer, he would get
Yeah.
lost in the world of food reviewers, you
Right.
know. Or if you're a football, and so I think hockey sometimes is easier because there are so many people doing baseball websites, and there are so many people doing football websites. Where hockey is a little bit less. I mean, it's a lot, but you know, and there is a limited market to it by the same stretch. But I'd rather have like an 80% of a limited market than 2% of a big market, you know. And that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah, but I guess my only point I'm trying to make is that it's not easy to make enough money to support yourself. Like most of the guys that I know. Yeah. Most of the guys I know who have done this, you know, are making some money, but not the level where they, you know, were doing as well as when they worked for an entity. And that's because in the hockey world, it's hard to generate enough hits to you know, again, you're in a different situation because you have.
Yeah, no, and I realize how incredibly lucky I am with that. You know, that to me is.
But for a single person trying to create a website by himself in hockey, I think it's hard to generate. So
yeah, no, it is, and you know, I've for a long time been trying to come up with a way to take these writers and a lot of them I have talked to in the past and help and just like a way to help them because they just want to write, and that's what they all come to me. And you know, a lot of them who do get laid off, I just want to write. You know, I just want to write. I said, well, unfortunately, you can't really just write anymore. You have to be able to. You have to find a marketing strategy. Like I have a guy who works with me. You guys all know who is in charge of selling advertising for this. And without him, I would be nothing. I mean, that's literally I drive the traffic. He makes sure that traffic is monetized. But I couldn't do that in the beginning. In the beginning, I did both. So you know, for a long time, I did both, and that was, you know, so yeah. I agree. I mean, it's very hard because if you just want to write, you do have to change, and you've been good about this, Kev, because you've actually, I mean, you're doing, I mean, Facebook live videos. I mean, who would have thought you would be doing something like that 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you've had to change. We've all done it, but right. You know, you got to. I've said this already. Now everybody on Facebook is doing Facebook Live, so you know, pretty soon that's not going to be as trendy as it is now because. You know, I'm watching.
Again, you were first in that too. We were one of the first in that, so that's good. And this is where USA Today is still USA Today. You know, I mean, that's good too.
Yeah, no, we've done a good job of modernizing and being, you know, trendy. You know, we've sort of recognized where people were dumping Facebook because it was perceived to be just for older people.
Yeah.
But we came back to it early, and that's really helped us because you know, there's still it dwarfs. Twitter, but you know,
Facebook, it's not even close. Yeah, I mean,
Now saying that, you need your Twitter because your hardcore base is there, and you got to literally drag your horse to water and dunk his head in the drink to get him to read your stories.
Very true. Really.
Anyway, we probably
good stuff, guys. I know, appreciate it. And I know there's a lot of people who watch this show that are in this work, that are trying to get interested in this too. So that's why I wanted to give it a little bit of time. And there are a lot of people out there who are, you know, curious as to what's happening because we have a lot of hardcore hockey writer and people, fans and stuff like that, and a lot of them write. So that's why I thought it was worth putting some time into today. But now we can get on to the other stuff at hand, which would be the hockey games last evening and some of the things that's going on around them. And first of all, I think every conversation today has to begin with the fact that Austin Matthews is the leading scorer in the NHL, and that is crazy. I mean, and now it's early, okay, it's early, but still, and he had a 4-goal game, but you know, it was him who got it. So people who are arguing, oh, he had a 4-goal game, I'm like, wait a second, he had the 4-goal game. Don't.
Right. There's nothing else to say. He had a 4-goal game. Like, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I know he has 10 points, get a 4-goal game, but that's because he had a 4-goal game. It's just like the first player in NHL history to do that in his first NHL game. So let's not take anything away from that.
It's not like he had the 4-goal game and hasn't scored a point since.
Let me let's start this by let me just push the elephant right in the pit and let's debate it. You know, could he possibly be as good as Connor McDavid? Russ,
very close. Yeah, I mean. There's not a great difference. The great difference that we could see with the eye test is that McDavid has this little bit of an extra gear. When he smells a goal, he can get to it. But Matthews also has this ability to just take the puck and just get to the net. And good luck trying to stop him with today's rules. And so I think they're very close to offsetting each other, and it may matter who they play with as much as what they can do to see their success. But the one thing I have to say, and I forget the guy's name, Mike can bring it up, But when I saw the other day that somebody was saying, well, Mitch Marner is going to have a better career than Austin Matthews, it drove me a little crazy.
I didn't say that, but I heard that on the radio. Someone said, there's no question in my mind that Mitch Marner is going to be a better NHL player than Austin Matthews.
There's a big question in my mind, considering not only is Austin Matthews a rookie and doing this and leading the league in scoring, not just rookies, but every level he's ever gone to, he's always been among the top scorers no matter where he's played. So this is really no different.
You nailed it on one big important thing, and that is he's got something that Stamkos, Tavares, McDavid, go through the line. I mean, that they didn't have, and that is that he has found his line mate right away. I mean, Nylander, those guys all struggled, with different. Even Crosby still
doesn't. Yeah, he's 29 years old and he hasn't found it.
But McDavid, as a 19-year-old, has put together what might be one of the best things since Gretzky, Curry. And when you throw this all together, I mean, it's crazy.
You have to give Mike Babcock credit for that, because at the rookie scrimmages in July, he said we're putting William Nylander with Austin Matthews. He had already said in training camp. That's the matchup that we're going to put the duo that we're going to put together. Now, the funny thing is, McDavid himself said at the World Cup, Matthews and I think the game the same way. They were on the same page. That's why they played so well together at the World Cup. They're different players. I mean, I think McDavid is more explosive speed-wise. His skill, and not to take away anything from Matthews' speed, but I think there's a higher gear there with McDavid. But the size and the quickness and the stick handling ability for Matthews is top notch. I mean, the goal that he scored last night, he took the Tampa Bay defenseman lost control of the puck for about half a second. By that point, he had taken the puck, he had spun around, and he had fired it between Bishop's legs. He's unbelievable, not only as a 19-year-old, but just period. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, my take on it is this. Connor McDavid, I've never seen a player, including, I covered Lemieux and Gretzky. Nobody can play and make plays at the speed that Connor McDavid. Yeah. It's really incredible. That's his gift. I mean, not only is he a great skater, but he can make plays at that speed. He doesn't have to slow down. So that's where he's a little bit different than Matthews. And Matthews is a little bit more of a power guy. They're completely different kinds of players. But I think in terms of impact, I think it's possible Matthews will be right there with him. Now, that's saying a lot, because Connor McDavid, is unbelievable.
Yes, I remember, Kevin, I can't help but think, we're sitting in the World Cup of Hockey, and how many times did they put that commercial on, the Adidas commercial with Connor McDavid?
Yeah.
And on the big screen, where you see him stick handling at the same time that he's going up, and he's stick handling his ball back and forth so fast. And then we're sitting there, and I'm saying they had to have sped this up. I mean, I actually contacted somebody about it, and they didn't. That's how fast Connor McDavid can do those things, and he's jumping rope while he's sticking. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things that just make no sense humanly possible. So that's what Connor McDavid does. You're right.
Now the question is whether Austin Matthews will be the Andre Dawson of hockey and win a major award being on a last place team, because Andre Dawson won MVP when he was with the Cubs and hit, I think, over 40 home runs, and they were a last place team. Right now, Toronto cannot stop anyone from scoring goals. In 4 of the 6 games, they've allowed 5 goals or more, and it's not the fault of Frederik Andersen, even though he's not playing well.
Not what the guy on Saturday night said.
Yeah, the guy on Saturday night. I'm sorry. It's last night Stamkos had 2 goals. Yeah. Kucherov, Durant, they were wide open. There was coverages that were completely blown. On one of the goals, Jake Gardiner, for some unknown reason, drifts up to the blue line and covers no one and allows Alex Killorn to score a goal. Right now, there's no concept of defense on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about that a little bit, because I want to add something to this a little bit. Mm-hmm. I found it interesting. I happened to talk to Bill Peters yesterday, the Carolina coach. I went down for the morning skate, and we were talking about a lot of things, including Austin Matthews and everything. But what came up in a conversation he had with 3 or 4 reporters was on how to build a team. And the one thing that, and I know Mike will agree on this, it's pretty clear that the Maple Leafs have gone out and they've assembled a really, really impressive collection of young forwards, with Nylander and Mitch Marner, and of course led by Austin Matthews, and they have other guys. Mm-hmm. What they have not assembled is a single defenseman to play with that group. I mean, they had one in Morgan Riley. Now, what's interesting is the Carolina Hurricanes have done exactly the opposite. What are they assembling? A group of young defensemen.
Yeah.
But they have no dominant forwards. They have no guys that can be the face of the franchise. Now, you would think that would be reversed. Like in Toronto, where they know hockey and they understand what you're trying to do, you would have thought they could have built with a bunch of young defensemen and then added the forwards last, because the great folks of Toronto understand that defense wins. But they didn't. They created excitement and a buzz with the forwards. And Carolina, a team that needs to create buzz and excitement, probably should have started with a bunch of forwards and then got the defense a little bit later. But, Peters made a point that is indisputable. He said, if you have the young defense, you can trade those guys to get the forwards. And that is true.
And I think
that is.
I don't think this is the Maple Leafs' fault. I think that when the league sort of changed over, like a year and a half ago, we saw this change sort of occurring, and last year, big time. The Leafs were already like heavy into their rebuilding the offense plan, and with those high picks, took those offensive players. They probably wish they would have swapped it and maybe gotten a defensive player or two. Now they're going to have to do that, but it's going to take a little longer now, and they still will be able to do it. They're going to be a high-picking team, so they're going to be able to do it, but this has sort of slowed them down a little bit, and yeah, Bill Peters is right.
Well, there was,
but the draft sometimes also dictates. What you do. But saying that, when they took Hannafin, there were only only two defensemen that year that everybody was talking about, him and Werenski, right?
Yeah. For the most part, yeah.
And there was a school of thought, Kevin, that at the number 4 pick in 2015, that Babcock was in favor of picking Hannafin, and that at that point, because Lou Lamoriello had not been hired, that Mark Hunter and Kyle Dubas and Shanahan were in favor of picking Mitch Marner. I think Mitch Marner is going to be a fine NHL player, but the point is well made. Right now, they've got 2 pretty decent prospects down in the American Hockey League, and Travis Dermott and Andrew Nielsen. They're like 2nd and 3rd round picks. It's going to take a couple years for those guys to get enough experience to be called up to the NHL. And right now, you've got guys that like Matt Hunwick, who's a veteran guy, but he's a 7th defenseman at best, and he's playing 20 minutes a night. Yeah. And Roman Polak, who they bring back after going UFA. I mean, it's a hodgepodge on the blue line. And Mike Babcock is going to really have to deal with it, because it's not going to get any better. And even if they go out and trade for somebody like a Lindholm or a Fowler, that's one guy in a group of 6.
But I will say this, and I know Mike will agree with me. I'm guessing Eck will too. If you're ranking now the teams you love to watch play, Maple Leafs are in the top 5 now. It's fun to watch them. It is just fun to watch that group. And they're going to compete every night, because Babcock, insists upon it to the point where, you won't play if you don't work hard. So they come out, they go hard, they play at 100 miles an hour. I think Anderson is the right goalie. And, Mike's assessment is right on. He hasn't been at his best, but he's a really good goalie. And, and I loved what Babcock said, when he said, why didn't he pull him? He says, because he's my goalie.
Right.
And I'm with him, and
he's gonna work through it.
Sort of sort it out. And if I pull him and don't play him, he can't sort it out. So that's why I'm playing him. I agree with that. That's his.
I don't know that I see him as the right goalie, but I don't know, because my thing is this: I do see some goalies as better with teams that have better defenses, and some goalies as really good when they get tons of shots on. Like Luongo would have been a great goalie for this team, because he's really good when he gets pounded with shots. Not that they're going to get, but I would have gone somebody like that for a shorter period of time, and then developed your goalie of the future while this is happening, instead of because if Anderson goes through a couple years like this, is he really going to bounce back and be the goalie that they want him to be?
Well, their goalie of the future might be the kid that they drafted in the 3rd round, Joseph Woll, out of Boston College.
Yeah, he's really good. He is.
No, that's true.
The thing is, Zach, is that they were.
This is 5 years with Anderson.
They were right. They were possibly targeting some young goaltenders in the 2nd round of the draft, and the way things broke, they didn't pick that player. Yeah. So instead, they went the route of trading for Anderson. Now, 5 years is a big commitment, but the thing is, I think that's the reason why Babcock is not very anxious to undercut his goaltender. This is a guy they're going to have for 5 years. This is
no, they've got to go with him.
Yeah, but it's 5 years. There's no guarantee it's 5 years as a starter. The same way when DiPietro signed his contract, there was no guarantee he was always going to be the starter.
Now you're citing one of the biggest disasters in
goaltending
goaltending
but my
of all time.
argument was there was an argument I had online with Islander fans, and my argument was if he ever became the backup goalie, would you want to still pay that salary? And a lot of Islander fans' answer was he'll never be the backup.
Yeah.
But then he did turn into the backup.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, and that's the problem with in the salary cap era. We've continually had problems with long-term contracts for goalies because it's the only position, and this is stating the obvious, but it seems to be forgotten by GMs. If he can't play, he can't play. In other words,
right.
You can play two defensemen, they just don't play 24 minutes.
Right.
You can play them 16 or 18. With the goalie, they don't play at all. So now you're sitting with a guy with $5 or $6 million on the bench, and you're getting nothing from him. Instead of, like if you overpay a defenseman, okay, you don't play him 24 minutes, but he's playing 17 and a half or 18 or 19. So
I was talking to somebody yesterday about Anderson, a scout I really trust, and he was talking about, and I was what's going on, because he's seen all of his games. I've watched bits and pieces of Toronto games. I haven't seen all of Anderson's games. I said, what's going on with them? He's like, well, he's given up a lot of short side goals. And I said, why? Short side goals are usually a sign of something else. And I said, why the short side goals? And Heath says, well, because the defense stinks. He's like, what? When you give up short side goals, it's because you're cheating towards passes across the spot. So you're leaning off your post. And he's like, so he's in that spot right now where that's simply what's happening with Anderson. And and it's true when you sit back and you watch the goals. A lot of the times he is giving up short side goals because he is thinking, I've got to not just play, because the way it works. The goalie plays a shot, defense takes the pass. That's how it works.
Well, I heard the analysis of one of the commentators that Anderson is being told to be a lot more aggressive than he was in Anaheim, play more on the edge of the crease rather than further back. I guess they want to take away some of the backdoor play.
That's weird, because isn't that a strange strategy, Mike?
Right. I don't think that's a good strategy, and I think eventually what will happen is they'll end up going back to what is better for him, because he was successful at that. But if that's what the team wants, if they think that's better for the concept overall, then he's at least going to try it. But right now, I think it's more the fact he missed training camp. And the defense.
Yeah. I mean, this is a lot. This is really early to be making these statements. I mean, it really is. But I'll just say about the playing up or playing back thing. I remember Steve Mason in Philadelphia. The best example is he came into Philly as a kind of an aggressive goalie, playing out a little bit more. The Flyers goalie coach moved him back to the net and said, you're a big enough goalie. You should be back in the net because our defense isn't the greatest, and it's easier to get from side to side if you're back in the net, and that way you'll be able to stop some of these 2-on-1s that get through. Passes, and Steve Mason now is much further back in the net than he was, and it really works for him.
How far Lundqvist is in it back in the net?
Lundqvist is so far back in the net too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the goaltending situation is so weird. I remember I think it was Don Waddell who said, I can never figure out goaltending. He said you look at it and you can't really even until whether they win or lose, you can't really know whether they're playing well or not, or where their confidence is. And I thought about that last night when I was watching the Red Wings play, because everybody in the world had written Jimmy Howard off. He looked like
right.
No, not me. No,
Mike did.
I did. And I still
it was a total lack of confidence last year, and now he's.
No.
Oh, Kevin froze on us a little bit there. So hopefully he comes back.
Hope he comes back.
But no, I think that
I used to argue with you guys about Howard.
Yeah. No, you did, and I'm I was kind of more on Mike's side. I think about this Howard thing. I think that
I'm still confident in my belief that I don't think he's a good goaltender. I don't think he'll ever be a good goaltender, and he's even subpar goaltenders will have streaks where they play well.
Here's what I think the Leafs need to do. This is going to sound a lot like John Tortorella, but until they have better defensemen, they have good skating defensemen, but they don't have guys who play good enough defense, or at least good enough puck possession. They need to block more shots.
Yeah, and they don't have.
Oh yeah, no, that's for sure. They don't block shots at all. I mean, they really are terrible at blocking shots, and
they don't. Well, this is the problem. They don't have defensemen who will stand up forwards at the blue line. There's no fear. The only one who does is Roman Polak, and he's
right.
terrible. He's terrible. Let's just say. I mean, let's just.
He's not terrible.
Last year in the Stanley Cup Finals, he was so terrible.
He's not a terrible defenseman. He wasn't good in the Stanley Cup Final, but he's not a terrible defenseman. But
I know that's hard to say, but I know
an older version of Radko Gudas. That's what he is.
Right.
Yeah, I'll totally buy that.
But you know what? The Leafs actually could use a Radko Gudas.
Yes, they could.
Another guy who could just strictly block shots and is mobile.
See, that's like a guy like Grossman, like Nick Grossman.
Yeah,
they need a couple of those defensemen who are like, and they would also not only would they help the defense, they would give the forwards a little bit more courage, like a little bit like, okay, you guys don't have to worry, we're gonna back you up, and that'd be a good thing. I mean, I heard a really funny expression. I don't know who said it, so I'll take credit for it because I think it was just something we determined. We came in over the course of a whole discussion. I think it was with Kevin, so I wish he was on here. But I said, like a goalie is like a wife. Like if you get a great goalie, you just accept the fact you have an incredible wife. But if you have a terrible wife, it every second of your life. So, I mean, the fact is, that's like teams that have great goalies like the Rangers, they just know they have a great wife, and that's it. This has been true all, of Carey Price, but as Montreal learned last year, when your wife's not around, you're in trouble.
But look, I mean, on our XM show, on our TSN show, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
For every guy that I get right, like a Fleury, like I thought Al Montoya was going to be a star. Like he's still an NHL goalie, which is I'm half
still
right.
Playing, right.
But again, it is really hard to identify goalies.
Really hard, really.
Even the top guys in every organization around the league have a hard time doing it, and they admit it.
And I really think, Russ, I've heard you guys talk about this on your XM show a lot, and I've always wanted to call in and say, you don't do call-ins, but I've always wanted to say this. Like I finally say this to you. I think the reason it's hard to identify goalies is because a goalie is so much a part of the system they're playing in. So
yes,
put a goalie in the wrong system when they're young. There's like Mike Dunham's another example. Like, I think of Dunham, I think of Montoya. I think of them sort of in similar ways. Like of these goalies who are who are incredible and should be incredible, but they weren't in the right system for the longest time.
I think that's fair, but now it's really hard because now you draft a goalie and you're expecting to get him 4 to 5 years later.
Right.
What's the league going to be like then?
What's your system going to be then? I know you're right. That's a really hard thing to put. And that's why some of the teams that have had, this is really interesting. We're coming to a little bit of an interesting thing here. That could be why some of the teams who have had similar systems over long periods of time have had better goalies because they are drafting into teams that change their strategy and change their style a lot. Like the Red Wings are a good example. They've been the same for a very long time. They've always managed to have pretty good goalies.
Yes.
That could be the Canadians, are a similar team to that too. I mean, obviously there's exceptions for Carey Prices of the world, but there aren't that many of them. I mean, for the most part, the great goalies are just, there's like 4 or 5, but the good goalies, whether they're good or whether they're terrible, I think depends on the team they play for. And
here's a dilemma and this is something I would take seriously. If the Toronto Maple Leafs pick first, right?
Right.
They will have to decide whether they want to get a defenseman or trade down the pick and get a defenseman or just pick that defenseman. And Lil Chagrin is as good as a defenseman as I've seen, and yet Nolan Patrick is a hell of an offensive talent. Yeah. Would they actually get the defenseman because that is really what they need? That is going to be debatable.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do. I think they take Nolan Patrick. Mike, go ahead. Sorry.
Honestly, I think what they would do is they would take Patrick and they would trade somebody like Van Riemsdyk or Kadri for a defenseman.
Yeah.
Because, I think that would be.
But you see what happens on the trade market. You don't get that just for that anymore. You can't do it.
Sure.
We're still in the same discussion, Kevin, and it's kind of interesting. So the thing that we were just saying about, we're talking about would the Leafs draft a defenseman with their first overall pick this time around if they were to get there? And because there is a good one, Russ says.
Yeah, Timothy Liljegren is as good a prospect defenseman as I've seen in a couple of years, and he's worthy of going first, especially if you need him.
Yeah, and there's no clear-cut number one, is there?
No, I mean, Nolan Patrick is the guy who gets all the talk, but I don't think it's clear-cut enough that if I do have a need and I rate these guys in a similar way, that I can go that way.
But I'm going to argue something else, that you don't need superstar defensemen. All right, that you don't, and I think we kind of saw that.
You still need defensemen.
You need defensemen, and you need good defensemen. But if you put together this kind of offense, and in Toronto, people are going to want to come and play for you. You're going to be able to get guys that are 3-4. You can have, like, if you have 4 guys that are top 4 defensemen, maybe they're not 1-2s, maybe they're 3-4s. Like, look at the Penguins. Besides Letang, there's no superstar defenseman. I mean, if you have that together.
But they don't even have Letang. Morgan Riley's not.
Morgan Riley's close enough to Letang for me.
No, he's a Norris Trophy candidate. He's a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman. Tampa Bay's got Victor Hedman. He's a Norris Trophy candidate.
But you don't. But even with.
But here's the
thing.
Tyler's
got Duncan Keith.
You don't. Yeah, but you when you have that much offense, okay, like they have there. If you can get if Nolan Patrick was a high level. I mean, you know better than I do. If he was way above everybody else, maybe I would say it differently. But Kev, what are your thoughts on this? Oh no, we lost him again. 2 rats. Oh,
Just so you know, Liljegren's a point a game over in the Swedish Elite League, Swedish Hockey League, and that's pretty impressive. Here's the bottom line. Bottom line is, when you're drafting a defenseman, you don't know if he's going to be a 1, a 2, or a 3. You really don't know.
Right, Victor. For 3 years, people thought Victor Hedman was a bad pick because you didn't know. Now all of a sudden, it looks like a genius move by the Tampa Bay Lightning, taking him 2nd overall.
I never thought Victor Hedman was a bad pick.
Yes, no, I never thought it was a bad pick. But to identify where he was going to end up, Mike's right about that. Now, Aaron Ekblad was a 1, but how often do you look at a defenseman and say he's a 1? No matter what, it's pretty rare.
No, it's really rare, but and you can do it. But like I said, I don't even think the Maple Leafs. I mean, this team is going to be good before anybody they draft can develop. So I really think they have to go out and draft a guy like that.
I guess here's my point: if you drafted a Liljegren, who I think can be a 1, and if you have to wait 2 years for him, at that point, Morgan Riley may not be a 1 anymore. We don't know where the league's going.
No, that's all true.
Look at the 2012 draft. 3 picks in a row, 3 defensemen. The first one pick was Griffin Reinhart, who's still in the American Hockey League at 22 years old. The next 2 were Morgan Riley and Hampus Lindholm. They're both basically all-stars. It's an exact science. That's the problem. And the thing is, even if you draft a defenseman first pick overall, you won't know for 3, 4, 5 years whether they're number 1 or number 2. Now, I agree with your point, Ak, that maybe things get escalated and hastened a bit with Toronto because they know they got this offense and they're clearing a lot of cap space. But it's also, how many defensemen are going to make it to the open market next year? Maybe Brent Burns, maybe Shattenkirk, 1 or 2 others.
No, but right now we have Shattenkirk, Fowler. There's players out there that Trouba you can go and get. So if you have the cap space.
But you have to get and give assets. If you're talking about just getting free and clear defensemen, they're all going to be 28, 29 years old.
Right.
But that's what you want, I think.
No, that isn't what you want anymore.
I don't know.
No, that's not.
Because I think the Maple Leafs are showing that if they added Cam Fowler and Brent Burns over the summer, I mean, immediately take that offense, Cam Fowler, Brent Burns.
Cam Fowler over the summer unless they trade assets.
Right, they'll trade, but you can trade futures. I'm just saying future assets. So yes, but because they don't need more young, crazy forwards. I mean, they have they could trade a.
Yeah, but the problem is that you have to take from Peter to pay Paul. If you're looking,
of course you do. That's always the issue with trades.
No, but here's the thing. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
If you're looking to get Jacob Trouba, you might have to give up William Nylander, which they don't want to do.
No. Here's the thing. So if you take Liljegren, he's 6 foot, 198 pounds. He's already playing against men. He's already offensively gifted.
Yeah.
Last year, he was the best player on the under-18 team, and he was 17.
And there's a guy like Ekblad who can come in quickly and make.
And that's a guy who's going to come in quicker than most. I can't get a guy like that on the open market.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, about that.
If I get a guy like that on the open market, he had those 7 or 8 years already, and now I'm going to be buying 2 years of prime play, 2 years of okay play, and then 2 years, I don't know what the play is going to be anymore.
Right.
And if he's the guy, if he's available and he's that good, then yeah, I'm with you 100%. But there's only one guy like that every draft, as far as defensemen go. So he may not be available.
That's what I'm saying. If you're drafting first, they might be in the position where they need to do that. They do have enough offense.
And they might do that. I mean, I wouldn't put that beyond Lou Lamoriello to do that.
what you're saying, Russ, is they'll make the right decision as opposed to the Columbus Blue Jackets making the wrong decision or the Edmonton Oilers making the wrong decision because the Edmonton Oilers took Yakupov instead of Ryan Murray, who they should have taken.
Yeah, but at the time that was a no-brainer. I mean,
I supported the Oilers in the decision.
Everybody. I mean, the Columbus Blue Jackets
flip-flop on
wanted so hard to not take Murray and take Yakupov. I mean, the Blue Jackets at that time, if you remember how disappointed they were that they couldn't get Yakupov. Yes. It was like he was like.
And here's the other thing that we have to remember in hindsight. In hindsight, we didn't know that Edmonton wasn't going to do a good job in not drafting defensemen, and we didn't know they were going to keep picking forwards either. Yeah, so.
And in hindsight, we didn't know that the owner was off his rocker and told the management staff to pick the forward no matter what.
So all those things we didn't know about. So it's hard to say that in hindsight, but you literally do have to draft this guy. And the one thing the Leafs have not been drafting is that guy to complement Morgan Riley. They have not drafted that player.
I do agree.
Travis Dermott may be close, but he's probably not that guy. He's probably a second pairing guy.
I think Andrew Nielsen's that guy, but he's 2 years away.
Right.
But I do think that there's going to be all you need is one of those players, Shattenkirk, Burns.
But like you said, but the problem with that is you will lose one or two of those grade A prospects, offensive prospects that you like. One of them,
Burns could be
enough.
Right. If you sign one, all you're spending is cap space. But the thing is, with the way the market is right now, you're talking. I mean, look what Yandel got.
Right.
A defenseman who's defensively challenged. I mean, he's okay defensively, not great, but offense is his game, and he got over $6 million a year. So you're talking about a Shattenkirk or a Burns if they hit free agency with a number of teams out there that need defensemen, over $6 million a year for defensemen. And then if you trade for one, you're talking trading significant assets. We've had an example this summer of a middle of the road number 3 or number 4 defenseman being acquired by the Edmonton Oilers for the first overall pick from a couple years ago. So that's the price that you
Here, pop quiz. How many points does Keith Yandel have?
1.
1 point.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
That's why you have to draft these guys. It's very risky to get them in free agency.
Oh, I know. I mean, they're not. I mean, the way Florida looked at that, I talked to him when they were doing that. The way they were looking at the Yandel thing was they didn't expect him to be as because how good do you really think they are?
It's like in basketball. There's only so many touches, only so many shots to go around.
So they're sitting there and they're saying, okay, we're not going to probably be able to get him, but you know what? We're not going to get like they're not looking for a 1-2. They're going to pay him like a 1-2, but they were just looking to solidify everything. So they were just saying, okay, and teams do this, and it doesn't always work. It quite often doesn't work, but to be frankly, it's this is what they were thinking. So yeah, he's got 1 point, which is not what they want, obviously.
Listen, only Ekblad only has 1.2.
Yeah, I mean it's early, so
but you're not paying him the amount that you're paying Keith Yandel.
No, that's true. He'll be paying a lot more eventually.
Don't worry, Russ. They're playing Toronto tomorrow, so those points will go up.
Those points will go up. I know. No, and then that's the reality of it, right? So we didn't get to a lot of good things today. The Voracek kit.
I'll just say quickly. I mean, there's again, like I said the other day, not to be a broken record, and I tweeted the minute it happened. You can't have a hit like that. Have the refs huddle up and then say it's 2 minutes for charging, and then possibly have the player be suspended after the fact.
I'm with you.
No review from the Department of Player Safety, and ironically, the thing I had the most problem with it is Dmitry Kulikov. Does he understand that his team was up?
Yeah, that was the thing
at the point, and all he did was light a fire under the Philadelphia Flyers.
The Flyers could not have been playing worse in that game. I mean. Yeah. That was the first 2 periods of that game were about as bad as I've ever seen them play. They had nothing going on.
They were like The Walking Dead. They were,
and it was bizarre in a way. They looked tired. They looked beat up. They just lost it. And then of course, but like we said before, who was due? Travis Konechny. We talked about on the show yesterday. He comes up with his first goal of the season and really lights the fire. And and that hit was stupid.
So Voracek said something really funny because Voracek has a way of putting like a really bad situation in perspective. Like, I don't know how far his helmet needed to fly off before they felt like that was a nasty headshot. But anyhow, he went to the bench and he tried to break his stick and he couldn't break it on the first attempt. And he goes, maybe I need to go to the gym because I should have been able to break that on the first shot.
That's embarrassing. That's funny. That's good. Voracek's awesome that way. And the Flyers, it turns out to be an incredible 2 points for them. I mean, just like really talk about stealing 2 points. That was stealing 2 points. That's about as stealing as 2 points as you'll ever. And if they make the playoffs by 1 or 2 points, again this year, that'll be 2 points you'll remember for sure. Yep. The Seattle situation is really interesting. We'll get to that maybe more tomorrow because that's a long running. So look forward to there's news there, and I think this really is a little teaser. This could very much lead to an NHL team from the Eastern Conference moving to the West.
Or is this just another rich guy saying, "Yeah, I'll buy this with my own money," and then all of a sudden, when things start to get close, it's not the case.
Yeah, I've never liked Mark Cubanish. Anyway, that's yeah, sure, we've seen this before. The Pittsburgh Pirates will have a little bit something to say about that. So anyway, yeah, it's very possible that is the case. So let's go to the NHL Lottery Simulator before we get out of here today.
All right.
It's early, but like we said, now we're already talking about the draft, so we have to.
Why not?
We just did. We spent a whole long time talking about who the Leafs would pick if they were first overall.
Yeah.
So here we go. The winner of today's Lottery Simulator is. Thank you, Mike. Oh, and there we have it. That, as we said before, you can't see it. Oh, you're kidding me.
Oh,
can you see it at all? There it is. No. Crap! It is the Toronto Maple Leafs. All
right.
All right. So that's ironic. Yeah, the Toronto Maple Leafs won it. I don't know why screen share. So now they're gonna have to make up their decision on who to take in the first pick overall, just like we discussed today.
This will be a big argument at
there
the
it is.
table.
See it now.
I can guarantee you this will be a very good argument at the Leafs table as to who they're going to take.
Oh, yeah. There it is. So anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.